Thank you all so much for taking time to listen in. I'm Emma Wheeler, the school psychologist here at Waccamaw High.
I'm Bo Godbold. I'm the WHS counselor here at Waccamaw High School. I'm going to be sharing my screen here, and Miss Emma is going to continue with our presentation.
So, we're here to talk about suicide prevention basics and the SOS Signs of Suicide program. Just a friendly reminder that this is intended to be a parent training only and isn't meant for students. So, our district has invested in the SOS program for all our middle and high schools, but Waccamaw High will be the first school to implement it. I want to thank our principal, Mr. George, for allowing Waccamaw High School to be the pilot school for this program. Also, I want to give a big thanks to Mr. Bowe, our guidance counselors, Ms. Maxwell, Ms. Tucker, and Mr. Marshall, and Mr. George's intern and special educator, Ms. McRobbie, for all their hard work getting this program started. I also want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to participate in this training. We're all excited about the program and feel like it will be a good thing for our students, and I hope by the end of this training that you'll agree with us. If you have a question that this presentation doesn't answer, feel free to contact Bo or myself. We will have our contact information up at the end. So before we get started, I want to acknowledge that suicide prevention is a tough topic to learn about. Parents in our community have lost children to suicide. Educators have lost their students. Our teens have lost their friends. Mental illness and suicide have impacted all of our lives in some way. I understand that talking about suicide can be scary. Even as a psychologist, talking about it isn't easy. If you need to take a break during this training, feel free to just pause the video and come back to it when you're ready. And remember, if you're ever struggling with your own mental health, there are community resources available. The same text and talk lines we give to our teens are also free and confidential for adults. It's important that you take care of yourself. As parents, we cannot pour from an empty cup.
So, what we intend to cover today are ways you can help your child potentially save a life. We will discuss youth suicide prevention basics, the new school protocol of ACT, acknowledge, care, and tell, and what to do when your child acts. We will share ways to help your child build coping skills and leave you with resources to learn more. We want to be clear, we are not expecting parents, students, or teachers to become mental health experts or counselors. But just like someone who is not a medical professional can learn to save a life through CPR, you and your child can learn to help save a life by knowing how to act.
Suicide is a complicated act. After a suicide, we often wonder why, but the truth is there is never one clear answer. Every individual has a complex mix of factors that could lead them to think about suicide, but we know that the presence of certain risk factors do increase a person's chance of suicide. One big factor is mental illness. The majority of people who die by suicide have a mental health disorder, most commonly depression. These mental health conditions are very treatable, but many kids struggle without getting help. When depression goes untreated, a young person may begin to feel so hopeless that they consider suicide. Depression can be hard to see. It doesn't always look like a sad mood. For teenagers, depression may present as being irritable, apathetic, unmotivated, or engaging in risky behaviors. Which brings us to another common factor, substance use. Many young people who struggle with depression also struggle with alcohol and drug use. Teenagers in general have a hard time with decision making, so when you add drugs or alcohol to the mix, it can lower inhibitions, which may lead a teen to act impulsively on a suicidal thought that they may not have sober. Feeling isolated and hopeless are also risk factors. These are big concerns right now, with more teens than ever feeling socially isolated, alone, and kind of hopeless that things may never be back to normal again because of COVID-19. Another factor that research has shown to increase the likelihood of suicide is access to guns. Suicide crises are often short term, but having access to a gun makes it easier to carry out the act in just an instant. To reduce suicide risk, if you choose to keep a gun in your home, keep it locked, unloaded, and lock and store ammunition separately. And finally, a risk factor of suicide is having thoughts of suicide. When somebody has these thoughts, it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to die. Instead, the person is trying to solve the problem of intense emotional pain and hopelessness. People generally don't want to die. They just want the pain to stop. which is why it's so important to learn about risk factors and warning signs so we can get teens help who need it quickly before they're in a suicidal crisis.
So there are many areas where we can intervene before someone reaches the point of considering suicide. When young people get treatment for depression or substance use, they begin to feel much better. They learn and develop healthy coping skills and how to manage negative feelings. Building connection to peers and adults, as well as healthy coping skills, can buffer young people during difficult times. Since guns are a leading factor in successful suicide attempts, it is very important to limit young people's access. Responsible ownership includes controlling their use. Please keep all firearms locked and stored in a secure space. Finally, a sense of hope for the future is the cornerstone of prevention.
A huge part of suicide prevention is educating students about mental health and letting them know that it's okay to ask for help. Using the SOS Signs of Suicide program through a video and guided discussion, students will learn to identify warning signs of suicide and depression in a single class period. At the end of the session, students complete a 7-question screening for depression to further encourage help seeking and connect students at risk with trusted adults. The curriculum raises awareness about behavioral health and encourages students to act, acknowledge, care, tell when they're worried about themselves or a peer. The SOS website has trailers that you can watch so you can get a glimpse of what your child is seeing. You can go to mindwise.org/suicide prevention to learn more.
I'm going to well, the district purchased SOS in December, and Emma and I attended the first available virtual training in January. We've developed our own SOS team at Waccamaw High School. The members on this team are myself and Ms. Wheeler, our principal, Mr. Adam George, our guidance counselors, Ms. Tamara Tucker, Ms. Megan Maxwell, Mr. Mike Marshall, Mr. George's special education and administrative intern, Ms. Becca McRobbie, and also on our team is Sergeant A.J. Cohut, our school resource officer. All of our teachers were trained last week. They learned about the SOS program and also how to identify warning signs of depression and depression and suicide, and how to act when they have a concern for a student. We are, of course, doing our parent training by video right now. We did an online training earlier this week. We're posting this video, as you know, and we hope you'll share it with other parents and encourage them to watch it. You should have also received an email with a letter about SOS, information on ACT, and a community mental health resource list. This information is also posted on our Facebook page and on our school website.
So in a perfect COVID-19 free world, we would ideally be able to deliver the SOS program to all our classrooms this school year. But unfortunately, that's not logistically possible. So we're going to be very strategic in who we deliver it to this school year and continue with the program next school year. Bo and I learned in our training that the SOS program isn't really designed to be given to every single student every school year. The SOS program follows a public health model, so similar to vaccines, not every student necessarily has to receive it for our school and students to benefit from it. And that is because the program emphasizes teaching teens how to help their peers. So in a way, it kind of creates a herd immunity following that vaccine analogy. So students in selected classrooms will get a letter this week informing them that they're going to be participating in SOS and explaining the program. Any child or parent can opt out of the program if they feel uncomfortable with it. Trainings will begin next week, February 16th, and continue through April. We're going to be focusing on hybrid students in second block in-person classes. We are targeting sophomores and juniors this school year. And next year, we'll focus on rising freshmen and sophomores. We're hoping to reach around 250 students this school year. If high schools are allowed to return to 4 days of a week of in-person instruction, we hope that number will go up. So myself, Mr. Godbold, Ms. Tucker, Ms. Maxwell, Ms. McRobbie, and Mr. Marshall are going to be delivering the program to classes and then following up with students who request it or have a positive depression screening. So Like you guys will learn about through SOS and can watch videos on their website. Students will learn through watching a video and engaging in class discussion to learn how to act, acknowledge, care, tell. Your child will learn to acknowledge signs of depression and suicide in themselves or a friend. Show that friend that they care and tell a trusted adult about their concerns. Parents are an important part of this message because you are trusted adults in your children's lives. Your teen is likely to come to you about concerns for themselves or a friend, which is why it's important to be proactive and talk about mental health openly without shame, just like we do physical health. As parents, we don't want the first conversation we have about mental health to be when our child is in crisis. Talking about suicide can feel scary, but if it's intimidating for you to bring up to your child as an adult, imagine how hard it might be for a teen to share with you that their friend or themselves is thinking about suicide. We as adults have to be the first ones to start having these courageous conversations.
So the underlying basis of this program is that most people give clues that they are thinking about suicide. This allows for an opportunity to intervene. Um, this is why it's important that we learn to recognize and acknowledge warning signs. These are the signs that your students will be learning to identify through video and discussion in the classroom. Things like anger or uncharacteristic irritability, big changes in behavior like withdrawal from friends and family, expressed hopelessness, significant changes in sleep patterns, sleeping all the time or not at all, and drinking and drug use, overwhelming pain, whether that's a physical pain or emotional pain, and of course, talking about suicide as we mentioned. So it's important for parents to know and recognize these signs as well.
So, through SOS, students will be learning about the power of listening to their friends and showing they care. Students will learn to use simple phrases to show they care and then just listen. As parents, we need to do the same. We have to react calmly and be accepting. It is important that we listen to our kids without interruptions or judgments, that we show empathy and never downplay their feelings or overreact to what is shared. Sometimes, as a parent, we might be thinking, why are you depressed? I've worked so hard to give you this great life. What do you have to worry about? But in a crisis moment, it's really important that we validate a teen's feelings and struggles while emphasizing that help is available and that they can feel better.
SOS encourages students to reach out and tell a trusted adult. So we're going to be encouraging students to think about the adults in school and out of school that they can turn to in times of distress. So as a parent, there's a good chance you could be your child's trusted adult.
So, after SOS, your child may want to talk to you about themselves or a friend. You might also be the trusted adult to your children's friends as well. If your child is concerned about their friend, you as a parent should listen to their concerns and assist them in seeking help. You should contact their friend's parents directly and share your child's concerns. You can contact school mental health staff or administration so they can support the child and their family. If you have immediate concerns about a child's safety, call 911. Reassure your child that they did the right thing by telling you. Teens are often worried that their friend will be mad at them for sharing this secret, but explain to them that their friend may initially be upset, but in the long run, that they will be grateful that they cared enough to tell and get them help. Ultimately, it is better to temporarily lose a friendship than it is to potentially permanently lose a friend to suicide. And if you're worried about your own child, reach out to their pediatrician or guidance counselor. Call and text lines offer free 24/7 support. 24/7 support. And in the case of a true emergency, it's important that you call 911 to get help fast.
So as we mentioned, we know this is a difficult conversation, but you don't need to be an expert or have all the answers in order to have it. Give yourself permission to be human and acknowledge that it is common to feel uncomfortable with this topic. Talk to somebody that might help you beforehand and afterwards. Most importantly, what we're asking the students, the teachers, parents as well, is never keep this a secret if this is something that you find out.
So, some students have thrived with virtual learning, but many others have really struggled. Over the last year, Teens have had limited social interactions, more screen time, irregular sleeping habits, and less access to sports and physical activity. So it makes sense why many young people and even adults are experiencing more mental health problems right now. So, as parents, it's important that we work with our child to figure out ways to stay connected during these challenging times. At home, you can encourage your child to send a text, email, or even an old fashioned letter to a family member. Tell them to video chat or call their friends. You can help them host a virtual dinner party, game night, or workout. You and your family can take part in a virtual book or movie club. And you can make fun activities part of your daily and weekly routine. And that can be as simple as having a movie night every Friday or cooking a new recipe as a family once a week. And most importantly, just having open communication about feelings and struggles and letting teens know that you're there for them to talk if they want to.
So you can help your kids build coping skills as well. These are not only good for them, but they're good for you. So coping skills are things that we do to manage negative feelings. Some of the most common and effective coping skills are exercise, journaling, talking to friends, talking about with family members about stressors, listening to music. I encourage you to think of what you might help your child develop, what coping skills you might help them with. Maybe it's playing or snuggling with a family pet or escaping into a great book or TV series. Getting competitive in sports or games. So there's all kinds of healthy coping skills that help us manage stressors. Help your child find a coping skill and yourself as well.
So, as parents, we encourage you to have open conversations about mental health with your teens. A recent online survey about teen mental health by the National 4-H Council found that 82% of teens want to talk more openly and honestly about mental health. Stigma can really make someone with a mental health problem be fearful to ask for help. As adults, we can help normalize the conversation and fight the negative stigma by letting teens know that it's okay to talk about mental health. We can make teens feel more comfortable talking about mental health by asking open ended questions in a caring, non judgmental way that really shows that you want to understand what they're going through rather than just interrogate them. We want to ask simple questions one at a time and focus on understanding their feelings and perspective. We can also really take time to listen to our teens instead of rushing to solve their problems. Rather than just giving advice, help your teen come up with their own plan of how to handle their emotions or deal with a problem. Remind them of their strengths and other difficult obstacles they've already overcome. It's okay to guide them and give suggestions, but make sure they're a part of a process rather than you just telling them what to do or trying to fix it. And finally, as parents, you can just make sure that your child knows you're available to talk and keep continuing the conversation about mental health at home.
So sometimes we struggle with the actual words to say when it comes to talking about suicide. I want y'all to know talking about suicide with someone does not put the idea in their head. Okay, instead it lets them know that you can see how much pain they're in, maybe that they're struggling, and it lets them know that you want to help. If you're concerned that your child might be thinking of suicide, that alone will likely create enough anxiety that you might be afraid of addressing it. But you can. You can ask indirectly, by saying something like, have you had thoughts of like wishing you could go to sleep and never wake up? Sometimes it might be easier just to kind of ask it directly. Have you thought about hurting yourself, or have you been thinking about suicide? It's a difficult conversation no matter what. If it's too difficult for you to think that you can do it, maybe you can get somebody to help you, maybe another parent, maybe a relative, your school counselor, your pediatrician, and the national helpline. That information is also available to help you talk with your child about this.
So, talking to teens about mental health can be a challenge. Sometimes it can feel forced or awkward, but there are ways to make it easier. If your teen has expressed they want to talk about something, let them lead a family meeting or discussion. Bringing up a tough topic during a video or board game can make it feel less intense. If depression or suicide comes up in a movie or the time to think about suicide, the factors that could lead the individual has a complex mix of answer. Every individual is there is never one clear wonder why. But the truth after a suicide, we often complicated act. As depression, also many young people who struggle with substance use to another common factor, which brings us to engaging in risky behaviors. Unmotivated or engagable, apathetic may present as being irritable. For teenagers, depression doesn't look like a sad mood. Hard to see. It doesn't always sad. Depression can be hard that they consider suicide and to feel so hopeless. Treated a young person may be when depression goes on, struggle without getting help treatable, but many mental health conditions are very depression. These mental another factor again because of COVID-19 may never be back to normal and kind of hopeless that things isolated, alone, and ever feeling socially isolated right now. With more teens than these are big concerns are also risk factors. Isolated and hopeless sober. Feeling that they may not have on a suicidal thought, teen to act impulsively, which may lead it can lower inhibitions or alcohol to the mix making. So when you add drugs, you'll have a hard time with decision making. Teenagers in general struggle with alcohol and drug use. It doesn't necessarily mean everybody has these thoughts of suicide. When some suicide is having thoughts, and finally a risk factor of separately. Lock and store ammunition locked, unloaded, and in your home. Keep it locked. If you choose to keep a gun to reduce suicide risk in just an instant, easier to carry out the act. Access to a gun makes it short term, but having suicide crises are often access to guns. Suicide is to increase the likelihood of factor that research has shown. Suicide is a
people get treatment for suicide. When young point of considering suicide before someone reaches areas where we can intervene. So there are many
they're in a suicidal crisis. You need it quickly before you can get teens help and warning signs. So we need to learn about risk factors, which is why it's so important. Just want the pain to stop. Generally don't want to die. They hopelessness. People sense emotional pain and hope to solve the problem of intent. Instead, the person is trying that they want to die.
Please keep all firearms locked in their use. Yep, includes controls. Responsible ownership of young people's access. It's very important to limit suicide attempts. It is a factor in successful. Since guns are a leading difficult times, can buffer young people during healthy coping skills, adults, as well as help his connection to peers and adults. Building how to manage negative feelings, coping skills, and develop healthy better. They begin to feel much depression or substance use, knowing how to act. Learn to help save a life.
Suicide can be scary. At the end of the session, single class period, and depression and warning signs of suicide will learn to identify with discussion. Students through a video and guided signs of suicide program using the SOS it's okay to ask for help and letting them know that students about mental health is educating each part of suicide prevention. A huge
of prevention is the cornerstone for the future, sense of hope. Finally, is something stored in a secure space.
That teachers and parents can safeguard teens' well-being and safety is to act, to acknowledge, care, tell. So if you're seeing warning signs of mental health problems, acknowledge them to yourself and your teen. Talk to your teen in a caring way that lets them know you want to listen and get them help. And finally, tell a professional. Sometimes it can be easy to attribute symptoms of mental health problems to your child being a moody teenager, but it's important that we don't just brush off these warning signs. If your child is having symptoms of a physical health problem, there's a point as a parent where okay, this is more than just growing pains or a cold, and you take your child to a medical professional. So you got to do the same thing for mental health concerns. Your child's guidance counselor or their pediatrician are really good places to start. And if a concern comes up after business hours, there are free 24/7 crisis call and text lines. And if you ever have an immediate safety concern for your child, you can call 911 or take them directly to the emergency room.
So after our live in video presentation we did with parents, we got several questions and we wanted to address those because they were really good questions. So One was, how will I know if my child is participating in SOS this school year? So your child should have already received a student letter if their class has been pre-selected to receive the program this year. You can always email Emma or myself, and we can let you know for sure if your child's class has been selected to participate.
So a parent may wonder, how can I opt out of my child participating? So if you don't want your child to participate in SOS this school year, just email myself or Mr. Bowe. Some students who have experienced a personal or family history of depression or suicide may not feel comfortable participating, and that's okay. So just let us know if your child doesn't want to participate, so we can arrange for a plan for them and an alternate activity for the day that their class receives SOS.
Another question was, will virtual students participate in SOS this school year? At this time, we do not plan to deliver SOS virtually. The program was originally designed for in-person delivery, and the major studies showing that it is a safe and effective program are based on that in-person delivery. We're not able to ensure an adult would be present to monitor student responses or ensure the student gets immediate help if they needed it, if it was delivered virtually. So for those reasons, we've decided to only deliver SOS in person this school year.
So you might wonder, why can't large groups of students participate in SOS program all at once? So it's recommended that SOS is delivered to small groups and never more than 25 students at once. The reason for this is that small groups allow for meaningful class discussion, close monitoring of student reactions, and same-day follow-up for students who request to speak to a school staff member about concerns that they might have for themselves or a friend.
So, can request my child receive SOS this school year? If you have a student at Waccamaw High, whether they attend in person or virtually, and you would like that child to participate in SOS this school year, email me or Emma and let us know. We can't guarantee that your child will receive it. And if we have enough interest, the school is considering offering the program to small groups of students later this spring after we've finished the initial pilot of the program. It's important that we follow the SOS implementation guidelines. So they recommend we start slow so that we ensure we deliver this program with the integrity it deserves.
So will the SOS continue next school year? Absolutely. So every middle and high school already has a license to use this program through December 2021, and we really intend to continue this program for years to come. Suicide prevention can't be a one-time training. We intend to keep the conversation going and make mental health awareness a part of our school culture here at Waccamaw High.
Another question was, what is the screening my child will take at the end of the SOS program? Okay, so following the video, students will complete a response slip which asks whether they would like to talk to an adult about any concerns they might have. School staff will conduct brief meetings with any student that's asking to talk. Students will also be completing a 7-question screening called the Brief Screen for Adolescent Depression. This tool does not provide a diagnosis of depression, but does indicate whether a young person should be referred for evaluation. So this screening indicates if a child is unlikely, possible, or likely to have symptoms of depression. All screenings will be reviewed by school mental health staff, and students identified as being at risk will be followed up with that day. You'll be contacted by the school if your child's screening indicates that they may need additional support or evaluation.
So yes, you will definitely be notified if your child's screening indicates symptoms of depression. If your child does express that they want to talk to someone or has a high depression screening, you'll be notified that very day, and we'll work with you to support your child here at school and also get them any help they need. We can explain what services are offered through the school and also give you a resource to help you access community-based mental health resources if needed.
Another question was, when will school staff follow up with students who request to talk to someone after the training? That's the reason we're doing the small cohorts that we're doing when we're training, because we intend to follow up with all the students who express a desire to talk that same day. It'll be myself, Emma, or one of the guidance counselors that will be following up with the students who request it.
Okay. You may want to know how you or your child can be more involved in spreading mental health awareness. Well, one important way is just to talk about it at home, in your community, at your church, in your business, and just be more comfortable talking about it and breaking that stigma. Your child can also join our mental health awareness club here at Walkmore High. As a parent, you can support the club through donating your time, money, or supplies when we need it. And our mission at the club is to empower students, to educate others about mental health awareness and suicide prevention, and encourage students to engage in healthy coping strategies to promote their own mental wellness. So if you or your child are interested in learning more about the club, you can contact myself or Mr. Bowe. So thank you all so much for listening in. I hope you're feeling more comfortable talking about mental health and knowing how to act if you have a concern. Nobody knows your child better than you. As parents, you play such an important role in suicide prevention. As a community, we can all work together to support our teens and ensure every student has a trusted adult to turn to. Mr. Bowe and I's contact information is up. Feel free to contact us with any questions, concerns, or ideas you have. Thank you so much for listening, and it's definitely an honor to work here at Walkmore High with your children and serve this community.
We hope you have a great evening or day. Thank you.